Hey everybody, sorry we're a little late for our live, but we're here and I'm Catherine from Microbalance and we're here with Brian Johnson. And Brian is a triple certified building biologist, licensed general contractor and builder, and he specializes in healthy home construction and environmental assessments. That is not doing him justice. He has a much longer, more extensive bio, but to keep it short and to get into the meat of what we're going to talk about, I just wanted to sort of introduce him that way because we're going to sort of talk about his origin story in a minute. But welcome, Brian. Thanks for being with us.
No, it was a great introduction, and thank you for that. And by the way, everyone, I'm usually a couple minutes late too, so it's all good. My apologies for all of us.
Well, we're going to try to get to everyone's questions as best we can while also kind of giving an overview of the topic, which is sort of cleaning for mold maintenance and why that's important. But before we start, I've got to give the disclaimer that this information is not intended as medical advice and should not be used to diagnose or treat any disease. We're really talking about buildings, so it shouldn't apply. But in the context of mold, it always applies
to absolutely.
Health. So just thought we'd say that. And so today we're talking about how homes actually get moldy, how to build to prevent it, and how to maintain a mold-safe home long-term. So to dive in, do you want to share about sort of how you became a building biologist and how you started working from the ground up like you do now, building homes rather than doing just assessments?
Yeah, absolutely. My path started in '93 in the lumber industry. And so I got to work with a lot of moldy lumber. I was a certified mold grader, certified mold, which I am certified in assessing mold, but that's not my main forte. No, I was certified in as a lumber grader, which is a big deal, like, because you have to study all of the different species of lumber. There's a lot that goes to it, right? It's understanding the source, if it's green, which is green lumber, and then kilned dried lumber. So through the years, I was in that industry for 8 years, and so I learned a lot about lumber, which took me into general contracting, into construction, because I worked with a lot of framers, and I didn't understand mold back then. I just knew that it existed, right? And so which then led me into general contracting, but I didn't want to build with lumber because I was just tired of lumber. And I'm not against lumber, everyone here, but it's just kind of my path was just kind of leading me this direction of, in 2002, I started building concrete homes. And we refer to it as insulated concrete forms, and it's these blocks, and it's progressed a lot since. And I use composite, organic, natural materials, not just styrofoam types of blocks, for anyone that understands what ICF is. And was building. I built several spec homes, became a licensed general contractor, but I was also big into health from the beginning. I was certified and, all types of, gyms, and carried certifications for health. And I was a bodybuilder. And then it morphed into mountain bike racing, of all things, and then triathlons. And while I was building, and I was also big into concrete because I love concrete. And so I always maintained doing concrete work. I didn't do as much home building later on. I stuck with concrete, but then it leads me into, we were doing a lot of waterproofing. I was doing chemical containment and waterproofing. And so we were doing very large commercial projects for waterproofing, and also too in residential. And I got to see a lot of different situations of water damage, right? So we were going from lumber to concrete. Now I'm back into like doing waterproofing. Now I'm understanding the real importance behind, like waterproofing and water damage, which leads to like mold, right? But also too, I was doing a lot of TI renovations in Palm Springs, California, through LA. And I have never seen so many moldy homes. Um, and so I was a general contractor on these projects, and we would come across mold, and I didn't want nothing to do with it. Still didn't really understand it. So we would have to bring in a mold, somebody to assess, to inspect. We would have to do remediation because I was a general contractor. I had to like run all of these crews. Like we're talking like dozens of projects. This
Oh,
is in
wow.
springs where it's dry, it's hot, right? Like how does like mold grow there? We can circle back on this kind of later because it's like I don't care what region of the country or the world you're on, your mold's growing. Doesn't matter. Don't move to Arizona just because you think that there's no mold here. But because I was in the health and wellness industry too, because that was my passion. So then in 2019 is when I formed Synergy 360 behind me here. And the goal was to come back to home building because I had a lot of influence by actual mentors that were in the mold industry, helping educate me about mold. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But also too functional integrative wellness practitioners and doctors, because I was big into the biohacking scene. I'm like, what do I need to do to optimize my health? To perform, to be on the podium, because I was very type A and I was in a lot of podiums. I was pretty good at what I did, all while doing construction. So in 2019, that was finally when I decided, hey, I'm going to take all of this biohacking, health and wellness, and an understanding of mold, and I'm going to build healthy environments. And that's where Synergy 360 started. So I built a couple spec homes starting in 2020. Using my own funds. I built my own healthy home specs. And that's what started it all. And that's where we're at today.
Okay. And where does like the building biology come into that? Because it's always interested me so much, like that piece of our health. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to me, but for a lot of people, it's not, for whatever reason, until they get sick.
Hey, so it was interesting, right? So I started building my first spec home. And I remembered I searched high and low, and I'm like healthy home building, because I worked on a lot of LEED projects, and what a LEED projects is, governed by the U.S. Green Building Council, and it's all these certifications, but it was for eco sustainability, green, and all that stuff. But already by 2015, everyone's pretty, kind of savvy in the construction industry that it was kind of greenwashing a little bit. And I experienced it firsthand. And that was another reason why I formed Synergy 360, is because I wanted to have my own beyond platinum LEED certified program. Right. And so here I am, I'm searching high and low, and like, there's nothing about holistic homes, right? There's nothing like, not in 2019. It just, the terms weren't there yet. Now hashtag holistic home is a thing, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't then. And so anyways, I lost my train of thought there. So a friend of mine says, hey, I found this company called Building Biology Institute. And I'm like, no way. I've been like searching. They can't exist. Like you got to be. She's like, yeah, they're kind of doing what you're doing. But come to find out, Building Biology Institute, it's an institute, and it's a training platform, and they have different certifications that comes all the way back from Germany. Like, it started back in the 50s when they were studying, the turn of the century after, post-war, of all of how the building materials and how they were streamlining, doing more production building, using more chemicals, and how people were getting sick. And so it started in Germany, and then in the 80s, it came to the US. Okay. And so here it's been around in the US since the 1980s. I didn't even learn about it until 2019 or 2020. That was when I learned about it. And so I was doing it more and kind of intuitively, like from the whole biohacking approach of like indoor air quality, circadian lighting systems, advanced water filtration systems. Like for me, it was just more of kind of like optimizing health perspective. But building biology just goes layers and layers and layers deep, right? They do their environmental consulting program. They have an EMF program. They have a new construction program. and they dissect and they go really deep into all of these programs. And so I was intrigued just to go through the programs to learn. Um,
Mhm.
I just did it for learning. It took me a couple of years to go through all of the coursework, and I just took my time with it. So it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to join just to get these certifications. I joined because I wanted to learn, because I thought it was so fascinating how I was kind of doing it intuitively, not even understanding what the building biology was, you know.
Yeah.
So it was very complimentary. It made sense, and I did learn a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I love sort of the principle. I don't know anywhere near, what someone like you knows, but I love how everything works in systems, and the built environment like works in systems with like from everything, like the materials you use to build the home, to the way that you wire the home, to the way that you like the air quality inside the home and the system. So it makes a lot of sense,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to mold.
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, on the EMF side, like, so they have this whole EMF course,
uh-huh.
and again, I was through. I always reference the biohacking. A lot of people that know me, I always bring it up, because like all of these different programs and bulletproof and all whatnot, they were talking about it kind of like a kind of a real high level, but you didn't really kind of understand it, you just like people were just getting like these plug-in, filters, or turning off their Wi-Fi at night, right? It was kind of generalized, but that was what inspired me. So when before building biology, I already knew. I'm like, well, I'm just pretty simple. Like in the early 2000s, when we just in the inception of like DSL and like dial up and DSL and things like that, before even fiber optics, we were using Ethernet cabling for our main our Ethernet, like our plug-in, like routers, right before everything started going wireless. So for me, it was just a no-brainer being on a lot of construction sites, because that's how in the AV world, audio visual, the low voltage side of everything, all the technology stuff for like these automated homes, that's what they were doing. And so I'm like, oh, well, it's so simple. Like I'm just going to hardwire the homes, right? Or on the electrical systems, the codes have gotten a lot better in the electrical side for the NEC, all the guidelines, like
Mhm.
they keep up pretty well on the state. I'm not talking about home codes and local counties for home building, because those suck. But from an NEC standpoint, if we're following the codes and we're doing everything that we're supposed to do on the electrical side and we're hardwiring the homes, I'm like, well, it's a no-brainer. Like we're addressing the EMFs. But it's great to go into the Building Biology Institute, because then you could take their courses and you learn if you could go really, really deep in it, and then even start to tweak things. But now it's pretty basic for me. Like if I'm working with a client, we're designing a home, like even on a retrofit, it's hard if somebody's like in an apartment and they're like, well, how do I go hardwired? And, like, how do I turn things off? You're like, then you're going to have cords and wires strung out, laying all over. So then it could be a trip hazard. So,
Yeah, it's definitely harder when you're not in control of the wiring of like the entire building.
yeah,
For sure.
it is. And that's where it can get kind of complex. And that's where there's a lot of great consultants, building biologists out there that I highly encourage. Like if somebody wants to do an EMF assessment, because we have all the meters and we know what we're looking for. So then we can write up a program like, hey, bring an electrician. And these are the things that you want to look for. These are the things that you need to fix. So you can still fix an existing home, no problem.
Oh yeah, and I mean, EMF is such an underappreciated cause of, any kind of issues for people, especially people that are sick already. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, it's becoming more prevalent now. People are starting to understand it, which is a good thing,
yeah.
but I don't want to say simple, but there's practical solutions out there, whether you're easily when you're building a home, depending on how far you're remodeling. And this, by the way, everyone, this goes for everything. We're just talking about
Yeah.
emails right now, but even goes for like remodeling to a certain point, and then if you're not doing any remodeling and you're trying to do something least invasive, that's where it kind of starts getting into a little bit more complicated. Because like you said, if somebody wired it wrong, now we got to start cutting holes and we got to, start doing things, maybe, so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, okay. Well, we're gonna switch gears to mold. and start talking about sort of the main conditions that cause mold to grow in a home, like, and take hold.
Yeah.
Not just like minor issues, but I guess what are the main things that you see with what you do?
Hey, by the way, so this will be fun. So we kind of did things a little bit in reverse because if our audience hasn't, and I think a lot of our audience has, there's a lot of direct correlation to EMF and mold, right?
Yeah.
A lot of Dr. Klinghardt studies out there. A lot of people are researching it. It's a big thing. And believe it or not, a lot of the stuff on Instagram, a lot of its stuff is kind of fluffy, but this is I like where they're going with this because there's legitimate studies and people are really going deep with that. And so since we did talk about the EMF, right now I'm just kind of linking. So we'll go into the mold, but yeah, just know that, right? Like, so another reason, even if you're not sensitive to EMFs, the EMFs can also affect people that are not sensitive because we just don't know, but it can also affect the growth of mold. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's definitely a big link between those two. It's crazy. But yeah, no, as far as like, so from a building perspective, I follow, and I'm going to tie into where we're going with this in your question, but like, this is pretty simple, basic science for anyone that's in the building biology and the building science world. But people that are starting to tap into it now. But for the layman's, there's four categories of building science. Okay, and it's going to tie into what we're talking about. I think this is a good backbone for everything. But it's bulk water management, right? Makes sense, right? We want to have a good roof. We want to be able to manage that water. We want to carry that water away from the structure, right? We don't want water leaking into the windows, to the siding, down into the foundations because there's lack of drainage. Water's going up under the stem walls and the foundations, creating high moisture content in the walls where mold can grow in the wall, right? And then elevating humidity levels within the home just because we're not managing that bulk water, okay? Number two is air sealing strategies. So if we have a leaky home, we're going to have conditioned air going into an unconditioned space. Maybe it's the attic, right? And that's going to create potential condensation. And I'm just going high level with this because it can do all kinds of things, right?
Right.
If there was mold in the framing members of the exterior wall and the mechanical HVAC systems aren't sized properly, it could be pulling air through that wall and bringing in those mold spores into the living environment. Okay, that's why these are so fundamental. And then we have vapor permeability, and what that means is I'm kind of laying the foundation here. So like materials, that when we're selecting materials, we want materials to be able to, the materials themselves. So I'm not talking about, there's a lot of talk about a breathing home and all these things. And that's not where I'm taking this, right? I'm taking this to the point when if we're using a material and it absorbs water, can the water pass through? If moisture was to get in, if vapor was to get in, can it pass through the material? Because if we're building these super tight homes full of plastics and non-breathable materials, what happens is that moisture gets trapped, and now it's potential for the breeding ground of mold, right? If there's a source, we'll talk about that, of course. And then, of course, is insulation strategies. Again, so now we want to be able to layer consistent layers of insulation to separate those conditions of that delta variant between high temperature swings, whether it's extreme cold outside, on the inside. We want to make sure that these are well insulated, not from an energy efficient standpoint, but from a performance standpoint of reducing the potential of condensation.
Yeah, like inside the walls and inside the windows and all that.
See how that all kind of fits together, right?
Yeah.
So if we're building or designing, so it's easy for me if we're building or designing that way. Say we already have a home. Like if I was to go do an inspection and an assessment, those are the four principles that I'm looking at right away, right? Looking at the roof, looking at the walls, looking at the windows, looking at the foundation, and I'm looking at these building science fundamentals of like, okay, where's the bulk water going? Oh, you know, okay, you know, we're fog testing the home, you know, we're blower door testing the home to see how leaky the home is, right? You know, so we're looking at a lot of the, like, even before I walk through the door of a house, before we even do a smell test and walk in, oh, it smells a little bit musty, but I think a lot of our clients here kind of already know that, you know, like that,
Yeah.
you know, some people sense it, they feel it, or they smell it, you know, the smell test. But there's a lot of things that the home tells me before I even walk through the door, you know, if there's the potential for that mold
Yes.
issue, right?
Well, so what are like the top design and construction decisions that you can make to sort of prevent mold down the road, building on what you're talking about?
Yeah. So if we're doing, it's easy on a new build, because taking these four core building, you know, science principles,
Right.
we're going to work with an architect,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to make sure that we have, you know, a good roofing system,
Right.
plenty of overhang, good design, how we're designing the home from the exposed elements, rain, windstorm, all the wind driven rain, all these types of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's very important to how we're protecting that home just in the design itself, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And then of course then bringing in these principles of, you know, like, hey, when we're doing our wall assemblies, are we, you know, building them to where they're not leaking air? Are we using materials that are vapor permeable, right? You know, are we properly insulating? So those are things that can be done in the design, but also too in like a remodel situation. You know, depending on how far we're going to take that remodel down, we can still do a lot of strategies and performance, and a lot of it has to do with the attic space too. That's huge in this whole scheme of everything. So, how is that attic ventilating? You
Mm-hmm.
know, because a lot of attics are not so much that they're not designed right, but it's like they'll go in and they'll stuff insulation everywhere, and they'll block the vents, and there's not proper ventilation, or there's not sufficient insulation, or people have ductwork for the air conditioning systems exposed in this attic that's in an extreme cold climate that creates
Yeah.
condensation, which is going to lead to mold. You know, all these types of things. So. These are strategies that we can look at in new designing a home, and then coming in to doing a full home assessment, right? Because it ties into the mechanical system as well, because it's an ecosystem, right? We have our building envelope with these building science principles, but then we have the mechanicals. So that's always kind of what I'm, you know, beyond like kind of mold remediate, you know, getting into mold and mold remediation on the build back process. That's what I'm looking at, because we
So
want to make sure it's not happening again.
where do you like mechanical systems in a house? That's like a sort of a question I've got, just because, obviously not a crawl space. Um, a lot of times people don't want to put them in a basement, and then maybe not an attic, unless it's
Yeah.
properly done. So, um,
It's a good question. And a lot of people have their own preference for
mhm,
sure. But first off, I'm not a big fan of crawl spaces, but there's a lot of crawl spaces out there. And
mhm,
there's a lot of crawl spaces out there with the blower motors and the forced air systems under the house. And to me, that's just, first off, having a crawl space is not good, but then to have the mechanical equipment under the crawl space is like the worst design ever, because when they're designing the house, they're not leaving any room to put the mechanical equipment, you know? So they
mhm,
stuff it under the house. It's just the worst design. But I think really I'm kind of speaking as I'm talking, I'm trying to speak to both worlds. Like I'm trying to speak to like new design, of course, a good architect or draftsman working with like somebody like myself. They're going to make sure that, hey, we have a sizable mechanical room. It's it's in a conditioned space,
mhm.
right? And then of course the design, where are we running all of our supplies and our returns? You know, are they going up into the attic? I would never say, I kind of let people do their design. I'm just kind of bringing up what I find, because I want everybody to feel free on their design. But when we're doing design, a lot of the times we see the mechanical, all of the ducts up into the attic. Um,
Mhm.
you know, just because it's easy to run in the design and the trusses, and it's just easy to run everything up into the crawl space or the attic space, or that interstitial space if it's a flat roof. It's just a really, for me as a builder, that's where I run them. I'm doing hard duct, rigid metal, and then I'll do flex duct lines to all my supplies and my returns. I'll always try to put the blower motor, the FAU system, like in a more of a conditioned space. If they have to go in the attic, then we start looking at, which also ties into back to the whole attic design and how we're insulating that attic. So if I'm in an extreme region climate zone, for example, there was a project that we did recently, and they were in a 6B or something like that. It was like 30 below in the wintertime, but it can get to like 90 degrees with 60-70% humidity in the summertime. That's pretty extreme, right? And so they didn't have sufficient insulation in the attic, and they didn't have good ventilation in the attic. And there was other problems too, but the ductwork was exposed to that, and it created a lot of condensation issues, and there's microbial growth in the duct, right? So if in that case, if we would have had a good ventilating attic, and we would have had, like say an R49, 16 inches of some kind of a blow-in fill, loose fill insulation, we could have covered those ducts in that insulation and use insulated ducts on top of that too, by the way. And then that way, the rest of the attic, yes, it would have reached extreme cool temperatures, but it would have ventilated properly, but we would have had that insulation protecting the home space.
Right.
So in that case, I know some people will do like mini splits, but that's just climatizing the air. Mini splits is just definitely not a solution for anything, because now you have to bring ventilation in, you have to bring filtration in on top of that. I really kind of just leave it up to the architect working with somebody such as myself, as far as like, okay, where are we putting that mechanical equipment? Is it a conditioned space? And if we're using we're going to be using duct work. Is that duct work in a conditioned space? I think that's what's really important, whatever that layout looks like.
Okay. Well, so for people that aren't building new, what are sort of the top things that they could do to make their home more mold resilient sort of today, like action steps? Do you have any kind of like quick stop gaps that you would suggest? I know that's a bad question.
No, it's a good question.
You look at something as a whole, but
well, it's a broad, yeah. So for me, I'm trying to like crunch that down, and I want to simplify this for everybody. Oh man, obviously it depends on the region,
right.
Whether if it's like a remodel or not even a remodel, maybe somebody just needs to figure out what they need. I'm not saying if they're like, there's already mold there and we're doing remediation. Let's just say we're living in an existing environment. Is that, help me reframe that a little bit. So if we're living in an existing environment, we're not doing any remodeling, what can we do?
Well, just like, say someone who's joining our live right now and they're living in their home. They don't think it has a mold problem. They're not sick from what they, can tell, but they want to look at their home, like from a building biology perspective, and say like, what are 3 things I could do today that would make my home more mold resilient, like to maybe a future problem?
There's, as far as like mold resilient on an existing home, I'm just gonna, I'll talk more practices. So for me, it would be indoor air quality is number one, right? Because even if there's potential mold fragments, they could be coming from outside.
Are you talking like a whole home stuff, like a whole home type system?
Yeah. You can do portables. Everyone, like, you can do the portables, but I'm a home builder, so I'm kind of looking at it as I want to create an ecosystem here. Okay. So definitely you can do portables. But for the home, even if it's a track home, it's a leak. We know that it's just a cheaper home. It is what it is. It's what we can afford, whatever, right? you know, I'm focused on indoor air quality, number one. So like I would come in, inspect, look at the mechanical system itself, make sure that it's clean, because we don't want all of those allergens and those mites and those spores, right? Just floating around, coming in from outside, coming in off of our shoes. We're walking through the house. We have carpeting in the house. You know, we're harboring all these different types of things that are hard to clean, right? And then it's getting into the system, because a lot of us don't have like a robust filtering system in front of the blower motor that's pulling air in to the system, and air is bypassing these cheap little filters from Home Depot, and it's getting up into the system.
Yeah.
And we're just running the system 24/7. You're just inhaling those spores. Like you're sleeping at night, you know, just inhaling those things, right? We're having itchy eyes, itchy, watery eyes, sore throats, right? Because we're running the system, because we're just being exposed to this dust, right? And so I look at indoor air quality as like very important, because we want to make sure that we go in there and revamp. Like, so I would encourage to have somebody come in that understands indoor air quality, that's like an HVAC specialist, which you can find on the Healthy Building Alliance, by the way. That way.
Yeah, that's it. And I'll stop in there. So Healthy Building Alliance. So where do people find that? And it's basically like a network of people, right? Professionals.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll circle back into this, because this is good to bring this in now. Because what the Healthy Building Alliance is, it was just my last 5 years of my Rolodex connections of working across the country looking for a healthy electrician, or an healthy, well, maybe they're healthy, electrician that, you know, focuses on, you know, EMFs and all these things, right? Wiring systems and whatnot. Indoor air quality specialists that focus on HVAC installation, architects, designers, interior designers that focus on wellness space, right? Building biologists, consultants, you know, painters, you know, general contractors, you name it, you know, functional integrative medicine doctors, because all of these doctors, they're looking for somebody that can build a healthy home for their client, because their client's mold sick, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so I started this kind of this Rolodex, if you will. Then it turned into a directory, but it was beyond a directory. It was beyond a directory. I needed a forum, right? Because we have all of these amazing groups out there on Face Group, you know, different forums for different things, different topics, in indoor air quality, detoxing protocols, mold, you know, all of the things, right? And so I wanted to create this database, or this resource center, to where people can talk and discuss all of these topics. But imagine having hundreds of professionals that I just talked about as our own inner directory, so we could be referring work and helping each other out, but also too, clients that are coming into these forums that have like these issues. Now they have access to all of the top professionals in the industry that are all vetted. So the Healthy Building Alliance is about vetting materials, and we have 800 different materials and manufacturers.
That's awesome.
And professionals. So imagine that you come to this, and they're all highly vetted. That's the core of what we're doing here, because I just don't want somebody coming in. This isn't about a money grab for somebody. This isn't just about work. This is about giving back and helping, and in specializing and doing what we do best, because we're helping somebody. And then also too, there's a learning platform to it too. So if somebody wants to kind of take their little mini courses, you know, like for what I put together, or other great, we have holistic realtors out there, right? They have their courses. So imagine we have the Healthy Home Summit now, which we're going to be working together with the Healthy Home Summit. So imagine it's this hub resource center, not just a directory. This is just a vetted list of professionals that's all part of this ecosystem, this hub network that wants to change the industry. So now if we're having this discussion of like, you know, hey, Brian, so somebody asked me that question, like, you're like, hey, what can I do to optimize my home? I'd be, you know, and you're in Tennessee. Oh, hey, you know, well, first off, they can put that question into the Healthy Building Alliance, right? And then, hey, there's somebody here in Tennessee that focuses on indoor air quality, or hey, that focuses on low EMF for wiring, or hey, that is actually a reliable source for a mold inspector. Because I'm particular about that, because it's a pretty big world out there of mold, you know, inspection.
Yeah. With
And
unfortunately a low barrier to entry,
you
depending
know,
on where you
yeah,
live.
it's crazy. It's great. And so it's very important that we have a very vetted source on that. And of course, like mold remediation, right? So how beautiful is that to have this resource center where, we have an integrative functional medicine doctor that's like, okay, hey, I'm going to the Healthy Building Alliance and I'm going to see what general contractors, like I'm going to help my client find the resource. Hey, I found an indoor air quality expert that focuses on air conditioning. I found, an electrician that can do a low EMF wiring environment. I found somebody that focuses on using non-toxic building materials. Because remember, I said over 800 different vetted materials and manufacturers. All of the materials that we're vetting, we're talking low toxic materials, low VOCs, formaldehyde free, like everything is like, again, this is my list that I had to put together over the years. I just brought it into the Healthy Building Alliance and created this Healthy Building Alliance, right? So
People
yeah,
find that. Is it just
it's
healthybuildingalliance.org?
healthybuildingalliance.org.
Okay.
Yes. Michelle's done an amazing job. She's our COO. She's helped put a lot of this together. She started the Instagram page, but we're linked Synergy 360 to the Healthy Building
Okay.
Alliance too. So even if
We'll put it in the notes for this,
yeah,
guys.
yeah, if we can put it in there, healthybuildingalliance.org.
Okay.
We've been in the soft launch state for a very long time. It's a very complex site. Again, because it's more than a directory, right? It's more than a forum. It's more than a learning center. It's this AI driven platform that does everything. So like it's going to be a very streamlined forum. So it can kind of manage topics of EMFs or manage topics about indoor air quality or mold and these different types of things. But you can go in there into the AI Alex and then start asking the questions.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's amazing. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Not to this level. I've seen a few directories pop up lately,
Mhm.
which is great. Because it's good for them, right? Because they're putting their resources of, I don't know if they're vetted or not, but they're putting the resources of people they've worked with, in the healthy home
Yeah.
industry that did not exist a year ago,
Right.
and so now they're starting to pop up. But this is a little bit different. Again, this is the hub for anything health and wellness and home related.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna shift us to be mindful of time, to talk
Oh,
about maintenance. To talk,
can I just finish up?
yes,
So we want to
sure.
focus on indoor quality, so we can go in there if we have dirty systems, bring in an indoor air quality specialist, clean the unit, retrofit it with a proper HEPA filter, like a MERV 16 filter, clean the ducts, clean the whole system, so that at least that way you have a nice clean system. This is for our audience here. Just a quick takeaway. Of course, if you got carpeting, right, get the carpeting out. Seriously. Take your shoes off at the front door, clean your clothes with some amazing cleaning products out there that we know.
What flooring systems do you like wood and tile?
Yeah. So anything, ultra low VOC, formaldehyde free, chemical free, whether it's tile, whether it's wood, whether it's luxury vinyl plank, whether it's concrete.
Okay.
There's so many great things out there, but focus on more of a hard surface, right? I know, use rugs, for children, or, if you want something soft to walk on, or what, I get it. I understand that.
Yeah.
But my point is this: we're trying to create a home that has, semi-porous to non-porous finishes to where you can wipe them down, right? You can take your microbalance cleaners, your enzymes, and you could just simply spray the house down and wipe that house down. That's really important. And if we do have time, I know we're running out, but there was an inspiration that really kind of led me to all these amazing cleaning products like Microbalance, on looking for solutions on how to clean that environment, because we can build a mold-free environment. We can renovate a mold-free environment all we want, and maybe we picked all these great building materials and things like that. But if we don't clean it using, getting a portable HEPA vac for your home, right? Having just non-toxic cleaners on hand to where you got to get this dust off. You got to clean this off, because that's what's going to keep at least the superficial dust and dirt and all the debris that's being blown in when the door opens up, or whether we're tracking it in, taking your shoes off. Yeah, I'll stop right there.
Yeah, no, it's great. So I guess let's talk about maintenance cleaning because that's really big for you, I know. And
Yeah,
you kind of even consult with people about cleaning. It's that important
yeah, yeah,
in terms of building biology. So do you want to talk
yes,
about maybe let's start with dust, like why
yes,
dust is such a big deal?
yeah, yeah.
um,
Yeah, no, this was perfect. So I was kind of like leading right into that, not knowing what that was the question, but there this was really fun going through like the Building Biology Institute. Um, Amazing people there, amazing people. I just love the Building Biology Institute and everybody that's a part of it. But I met this gentleman through Paula Baker Laporte, who's she sits on the board and she wrote the prescription for a healthy house. And her book, by the way, it tells you how to clean your house. You
mhm.
know,
I have
like
her book.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She there's a huge section, and she co-wrote that. John Banta co-wrote that book with her, and so she introduced me to John when I was building and going really deep into all of this stuff. I got certified as a mold inspector. Just I needed to understand it. You know,
Mhm.
I went for the credentials, but I don't claim to be a mold inspector. There's companies that I recommend. I'll do it if I have to, like if I'm doing an on-site assessment and I just want to, you know, grab some quick samples or something like that, you know, then I'll do it. But I did go down the rabbit hole with it. John Banta, I'm going to the cleaning for a reason here. I want to explain this, but John Banta had this system called Pathways. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or people here on the call. I did 3 different projects with it myself, pretty big projects. It's a really unique way of testing, but it's very time consuming and it takes like 28 days
Oh, wow.
to do the whole protocol. And basically you take these I won't get into it, but you take these swabs every 4 feet around the perimeter of every space of that home. And so this is all going to tie together nicely. Just hang tight with me, right? So you test everything, and then you clean it, and then you test it again. So you have these samples from before, and there's a bunch. Like there could be 50 to 100, right? Because you're doing every 2 feet around every perimeter of the wall space, and then cabinetry and things like that. Okay,
Mhm.
so then what you do is you send these pathway swabs out to his laboratory, and then they'll test it what it was before, and they'll test it what it is after. You know, just to see, hey, was there a potential problem before, anyways? Um,
Yeah.
and then did your cleaning regimen actually clean what was there?
Mhm.
It's awesome. That was my biggest takeaway because it was like we had cleaned, but not good enough.
Right.
You know, and so we'd have elevated numbers even after. And I'm consulting with John and I'm like, what's going on? And he says, what are you cleaning with? Right.
Yeah.
Hence like the enzyme cleaners and everything like you guys have.
Yeah.
Um, because it's more than just vinegar.
Mhm.
You know, it's more than just baking soda. Again, everyone, I'm all for non-toxic cleaning materials, hydrogen peroxide, all the stuff, right? You know, but I really started getting into like the surfactants, you
Yeah.
know, right?
The need to actually clean and
Yes.
to remove debris.
Thank you.
That's what they do.
That if there's the biggest takeaway right now in this live is this piece right now, what we're talking about cleaning. And then so what you do, um, you know, so what we would do, then you wait 28 days and then you test again to see if it comes back.
Mhm.
So, and you map it out. And if there was a hot spot over on this section of the house, we cleaned it, it's gone. We retested it, came back to that spot again. Right? Does that make sense?
That
So
is very I love
it,
that.
it's pretty cool, but not a lot of mold people really care to
No,
go
no,
through the
but I
whole
mean, like,
thing.
if you're truly trying to figure out where and why, it's a good way to do
It's
it.
pretty cool. It's cool. Hey, everyone's going to have an opinion about it. So don't beat me up if you don't like it. But for me, my takeaway was it showed me how well I was cleaning an environment. You know, I wasn't the mold piece wasn't like the biggest takeaway for me because we would come to find out there were, you know, mold was behind a wall and the test didn't pick it up. I won't go there, but the cleaning aspect, that was huge.
Mhm.
That was big for me. So knowing on when we're, like you said, the dust, right? So in the home, especially if you have a leaky home, if we're talking about building a healthy home, we're going to build an airtight home with a mechanical system that's going to ventilate, exchange air, total building science, awesome, amazing. Probably even some renovations there too, because we're going to bring in the air sealing strategies and all these types of things, right? But if we just have an average home, leaky home, doors are open, windows are leaking, things like that. I'm not talking about water damage, mold. We're talking about dust, right?
Yeah.
Then HEPA vacuum, frequently. Yeah, let's be clean freaks, everyone. And that's have a regimen, whether it's I use those Bona, Swiffers where you can clean it. You spray down your enzyme cleaner and things like that, right? And just you clean with hot water, those, whether it's a shark or something, with steam, whatever, like have those and clean, and just make, clean above, right? Every ledger, on top of every door, on top of cabinets, things like that. Like, especially if you're sensitive and you're more allergic to a lot of things, right? Because all those dust and those spores and those fragments and the mold, I mean, they're all floating around in that house. And so the goal is, again, back to the hard surfaces. Now, if we have a carpet, it's hard to clean that carpet. And, we're not even talking VOCs and chemicals and all of that crap. We're talking about how it's harboring all of that. And then you're going to come out and have a professional come in there and clean it. And then it's going to get the pad wet and you're going to have all this moisture under the pad, like not a good situation, right? That's why I'm big on, hey, like if you use Red Spray Brew, right? Some nice organic rugs and things like that, right? At least you can take them out, have them clean, and then you can clean your house.
Yeah. I mean, carpet also prevents you from being able to see how dirty it is. Because you can't see that pad. And that pad is what really harbors the majority of the problem most of the time. So
yeah, it does. And mold.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I think I'm going to move on to people's questions because I'm afraid that we don't have you for much longer, and I want to make sure that
I'll stay on as long as it takes. But yeah, if there's questions, let's start bringing them in.
Okay, Nicole, you want to pop up? Okay, so I had HEPA and carbon filter installed on the return of the HVAC, but the metal box-like device holding filters is lined on the inside with styrofoam. Should I cover the styrofoam with heat tape or leave it and periodically wipe it down with what? It has been in place only a month since the ducts were cleaned post major remediation.
Yeah.
So I don't want to trap anything behind the tape. If it's loose, it will damage the styrofoam liner. So he's a sensitive Sears patient.
Yeah. So that leads me back to the core of like when I was talking about like when we're revamping our systems, and it's all in the filter box. So how it holds that filter tray. A lot of these, just the stock manufacturer ones, they're just crappy. The air is supposed to suck the filter up onto there and it creates a seal. And they leak so bad. Yeah. I'm just trying to think of, God, there's just so many different, like this is a total, like a DIY thing, it could even be going to like Home Depot. I'm just throwing stuff out, guys. This is just on the whim. It could even be going to Home Depot, like, the door seals, like you replace your weather stripping and your door seals, maybe even going in there and then creating like a weather stripping. Again, we're just kind of geeking out DIY stuff here, but creating like a seal to where hopefully that filter can seal better. That's just what comes to mind real quick. So ultimately, we need to find a way to make sure that filter's sealing property. And you say carbon. I'm just super curious of what HEPA filter that is, because a lot of like the Super V's or the Perfect 16 by IQ Air, like those systems seal really well. That's why I like them. But like April Air makes a decent box. They're 416 or whatever. That's a pretty good one. I'd have to kind of know more, but I'm in my mind, if it's leaking, I'm picturing kind of like this real stock, loosey goosey, where you're sticking the filter in there, it's not sealing. So we got to come up with a solution on what is it going to take to make sure we're not getting any air bypassing, because that's a common problem.
Should you wipe it down periodically?
Yeah, I mean, definitely wipe it down. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. and try to wipe down what you can inside of the HVAC unit. Make sure it's turned off so the fan motor's not coming on.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
If the main panel's off, it's supposed to shut off, but just make sure it's off.
And where can we find your properties? My clients always need a mold-free place to move.
So we are not, I don't want to sit here and advertise myself, but I'm building 20 homes here in north of Tucson. It's amazing, super awesome indoor air quality. And I'm building 20 homes, and they will be the healthiest homes of like the future of how we're developing and building homes. And I've seen a lot of great homes. We're building science. I take the building biology kind of bordering more into the purest level of not using spray foams, everyone. Even I used to historically, but I'm trying to clean up what we can, and spray foams can have their issues. So the way that I'm designing the homes, we're just putting all of the building science using non-toxic building materials. These will be the ultimate homes. Every home is equipped with Super Vs and air ventilation, non-toxic building material, the whole thing, 12-inch, because remember, I'm a concrete builder, right? So all the walls are 12 inches of concrete. There's no cavity for mold to ever get in. These homes are on another level. That's, but follow the healthybuildinglines.org.
Because they can find out about these homes on the Synergy 360
Synergy
website.
360, yeah,
okay.
yeah, and we also have synergy360.element.com, but also you just sync up with me, Synergy 360, and also the Healthy Building Lines. And I'm sharing this also for like what we're doing in the future. We have a couple builders that's part of the Healthy Building Lines. Again, we're going to be bringing on hundreds of professionals. So circle back very soon to the Healthy Building Lines, and that way people have a way to source nice healthy homes. There's not a lot in inventory right now because this is kind of newer, right? It's really kind of taken off to this level, so it's not like we have all of these homes in stock right now. Everybody's just kind of building them kind of customized. I want to build 20 because I'm creating it more as a model for investors and developers to take this model, and this is how you do it, and this is how you do it effectively. Because I've been part of projects that start off good, they're marketing good, but then the cost is too high, so they start cutting all kinds of corners, and the house ended up not being what it was supposed to be.
Oh, and also, like, I'm going to plug Brian's article on sinusitis wellness only because, well, not only because, but for many reasons. But one of the reasons is there's a list of like daily, weekly, monthly cleaning, like tips and what to do and how to do it. So we're not going to get into that now, but it's in the article. So it's super helpful.
Yeah.
About the
sure.
cleaning.
The cleaning, big, real big. We can create a healthy home, but if you're not maintaining it, that stuff can still come in. And maybe it's not the home itself, but it's the contaminants coming into the home.
Okay, so next question. Which type of insulation is recommended for a new home? Is it worth to get triple pane windows in mild weather areas?
No, that's kind of an upsell. A dual pane, unless you have the money, I don't think it's necessary, especially in San Francisco in that climate zone. Insulation, there's a lot of, it's hard to find, what's legit out there, but now we've got, there's so many good insulations out there, by the way. We have American rock wool. It's a blow-in rock wool, mineral rock wool. We have rock wool, and we have formaldehyde-free rock wools. We have, and they all have different R ratings. So you have to select, the R per inch based upon what you're trying to insulate. So it's not like it's a one size fits all. We've got the Havelock wool. We've got the Knauf EcoBat. Even Owens Corning makes some like formaldehyde-free fiberglass. Not my favorite. I try to stick with mineral rock wool is kind of like my number one. That's my number one. The Havelock wool would be two. There's hemp wool now has a product, comes in bats and boards. So it just depends on, there's a lot of healthy insulations out there is my point, but you have to select an insulation that makes sense for what you're trying to do as far as insulating.
Can you discuss proper flashing for chimneys and recommended chimney maintenance? I don't.
Chimney maintenance isn't like, I would defer that to somebody that cleans chimneys. you know, because the reason why is, as a builder, I've been in the Southwest in California, so we're doing more heatilators with, like, you know, sealed gas type fireplaces. Okay, so it's not my forte. I would obviously recommend, you know, a professional chimney cleaning company. But as far as like the flashing, huge deal. You know, we got to make sure that it's flashed properly, of course, all and around, that the water is hitting the flashing, and it's being directed and going around, not holding that water. On a lot of home inspections, I'll see the flashing's just not designed right, and the water just sits there. And that has the potential for a leak. So that's a roofing contractor, but it's bringing somebody in that understands. I mean, any good roofing contractor is gonna, that's one of the first things they're gonna look at, is where the chimney's coming out and how it's flashed out around, you know, for sure. It should be. A good roofing contractor will be, not a roofing inspector. Those could be hit or miss. Sorry for
they're very different too.
Yeah.
What's the number one unique thing you do in the homes you build? It's probably hard.
The ecosystem. It's the ecosystem. So it's building the whole building science principles I was talking about earlier. For those of you who didn't catch it, there's a lot that goes into the building envelope design. There's a lot of what we're bringing into the mechanical design, and everything is built and sized exactly proportionately to how we're designing the home, so it works as an efficient. I'm not talking energy efficient. If we're building for health, we're building an energy efficient home, and regardless. Okay, so but yeah, it's the whole ecosystem. It's the non-toxic building materials. It's the building science perspective. It's the mechanical systems. It's a low EMF environment, right? It's everything of this ecosystem that creates a supportive environment to sustain, you know, to get to a place of homeostasis, right? A place to heal. So I look at the home as an ecosystem, not just one component.
What's next? Isn't luxury vinyl plank toxic with VOCs, etc.?
There's a lot out there now that even, like, I use Green Guard Gold as my basic starting point. Now, I'm not saying Green Guard Gold is the answer to everything. You know, we've got so many different certifications out there that are, you know, great resources to look up. But there's several building biologists, well, including myself. Like, you know, somebody's working with me. I have probably at least 5 different manufacturers of luxury vinyl planks that are formaldehyde free and VOC free.
Okay. So you can find it.
Yeah, they're out there. They're out there. I was just kind of promoting that, you know, like, it's not something I use, but hey, it might make sense for a particular project, so maybe I would spec it. Well, if I'm going to spec it, I'm going to spec that it's a 0 VOC, not formaldehyde free. That exceeds a Green Guard Gold certification, of course.
Yeah. I need tips to deal with a 100-year-old leaky apartment building I can't afford to leave at this time. Clean a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Cleaning. At least a 100-year-old apartment building sounds like somewhere back east somewhere. At least having an inspection done, like bring in like you know why I like building biologists that focus on indoor environmental consulting? Because they can handle the mold assessing side, and they're more diverse than just a mold inspector. I was almost going to say, well, get a mold inspector. Well, no, because then you don't know who you're getting. Get a building biologist that focuses on environmental consulting if you can, and find one in your area, healthybuildingalliance.org or the health or buildingbiology.com, right? Find somebody to come in there, at least get a baseline of where you're at. You know, I think it's good to have a baseline, because that's not a lot of money invested to say, hey, what can I do? What can I do with this? Right. I mean, that's where we got to start. Somebody's going to have to inspect somewhere. Leaky home. Like, okay, where's it leaking from? Like, all right, can't afford a lot, but like, is it something a roofing contractor can come in and at least temporarily patch? Or, you know, is there things that can be temporarily done? But you got to have a direction first with somebody that's going to come in and consult. Again, I just wouldn't bring in a roofing inspector. I just wouldn't bring in a mold inspector. Bring in somebody that can help you direct this, because an environmental consultant or expert, they're going to understand the cleaning principles, all of the things, everything.
Yeah.
So
What is the recommended foundation if a crawl space is not great?
Oh, well, I like slab on grade. I like pouring my concrete directly on, right on the grade.
Yeah.
On the,
I love slabs, but
yeah.
so what do you say about concrete curing for slabs, like before flooring goes
Mhm.
in and things like that?
Yeah.
Do you have any
Yeah.
tips on that?
So first off, if we're pouring concrete, more than likely we're doing a new design or adding it on a room or something like that. It's, doing, obviously the soils testing, right? For one. And then bringing in, maybe over excavating and bringing in gravel, as a sub base. Also knowing if there's radon and potentially in the soil, right? And then actually even plumbing, which is cheap, is super cheap. We're talking a couple $100 for somebody to just run all of your perforated pipes underneath the rock. Then you do your vapor wrap, like a Stego wrap, and then you pour your concrete. You can insulate too. And then you pour your concrete over that wrap, give it your 28 days. And then of course, concrete does take years and years to outgas. But if you're taking all of these procedures, like we're just talking about, I'm just talking high level here, probably in 90 days, like we're getting into our frame, or, maybe last 60 days, 90 days, maybe we might be at like 5 pounds of moisture. If we're following these protocols, all the way down to dropping down to probably even 3 to 4 pounds of moisture in that concrete substrate, if we're following these protocols. But if we're building on a high water table, we're not over excavating, we're not bringing in gravel as a fill, and it's just saturated wet soil, and we're not draining water properly around that. It's just harnessing and pulling water into that foundation, which is going to lead to potential mold, even under tile in the mortar and things like that, right? So hempcrete homes.
Yeah, hempcrete.
Yeah. Really cool. It's something that I never got into, but I know people that do. They love it. It's amazing. I pick it way over straw bale anytime. Like I don't promote straw bale. I don't believe in it. I know some people do, and I've seen some really cool ones, but you have to over engineer them to make sure that you don't get moisture in there in a straw bale. Hempcrete, solid. I've seen a few. I've been asked to even be part of building a few. It's just, for me, it's a specific skill set. You got to have certain equipment. Now I'm going to laugh here at myself because I build rammed earth homes. And so you're gonna be like, okay, well, you don't build hempcrete, but you build rammed earth, just because it's a total different skill set. I have access to all of the forms. I know exactly how to compact and do rammed earth, because we're just using rammed earth. We're not importing any hemp. We're not, bringing in the bales. We're not having to mix it and, form it and pour it in like a certain way, like you do in hempcrete. Again, it's amazing. I just went more of the direction of rammed earth, which is a 2-foot wall. And some hempcrete takes regular concrete, some doesn't. I know that there's people building hempcrete in Hawaii. I think it's super. I think it's great. I have nothing against it at all, But for me, I build with ICF or rammed earth. That's just my personal preference.
All right. Well, I think we got through them all. Thank you.
That was it. There's got to be more. Come on, people.
Well, I think we had like a couple more about air purifiers, what you recommend. We got through best flooring types. Oh, ideal. How do you feel about humidifiers? That was a question.
Yeah.
Whole home humidifiers.
Whole house humidifiers. Yeah. They're like, so even, okay, I know enough to know this. There's like, for a whole house, there's like several different types, and I can't remember the names of them because I don't use them a lot. It's a conversation we'd have to have separately, but like there's one type that has a tray system that these filters go through the tray, and then it comes up, and then the air goes through these saturated filters. Those I heard are very prone to microbial growth.
Mhm.
Okay. I can't remember how the other system works, but it's a way to where I think it's on a misting system or something. Don't hold me to this, but it's a way to where it will dry out and you won't, it's less likely you're going to get that microbial growth in there. So that's my knowledge on it. And I always defer. I even deferred to a mechanical engineer going, hey, we need to change out this other system. And the mechanical engineer, that does the mechanicals for HVAC, they're like, that's a little bit of our expertise. So it's a little bit of a niche piece, but I think that's good information to kind of start with, just to know, like, bottom line is this: we don't want standing water, period.
And you also don't want like truly elevated, consistent indoor humidity either.
Well,
I'm
guessing that person might be asking that question more from Arizona or
yeah.
somewhere.
I live in Tennessee, so the thought of a
Oh yeah, no,
humidifier.
we're the opposite over here, right? I think we get humidity 2 months out of the year, July, August, kind of a thing. And yeah, no, it's a good. So this is kind of opens up a point. We won't get into this because we're out of time, but too low humidity causes a lot of issues with like the mucous membranes, and right, and that's a whole nother health issue, right? Versus high humidity, we know what the high humidity leads to. So we're always trying to find this balance of like 35 to 50% or whatever humidity. And hey, if we're in Arizona, that's always 15%, or we're in this super dry climate, like, it's a thing. It's definitely something to consider, getting into humidification for sure. Yeah. I don't build with it. Let me just add this piece with it. I don't do, even though I'm in Arizona and say we're at 15%, I don't use the humidification just because it's just something that I'm just not into. I just kind of try to work with it, but I use building materials that are natural. And I kind of should have said this early on, but I'm saying it now. So if we're using a lot of synthetic building materials, they produce like this positive ionic charge, right? Now we have this positive ion charged area within the home. We have all these synthetic materials. We have air moving. We have that static constantly building, that total charge, negative ions, natural, nature, right? So if we're building a home like enriched with more natural materials, and that are actual that are oh, I forgot the term right now, but basically what they'll do is if there's any slightest little bit of moisture, it'll actually hold the moisture, and then when it dries out, it'll release. Sorry, I forgot the term right now, but people here watching going, oh yeah, hydric
permeable kind of,
hydric buffering capabilities or capacities. So it actually tries to even, like, any moisture that's there, it holds it, and then it'll kind of release. So basically it's trying to create like this equilibrium within that space. So if you're using natural building materials, again, this isn't the answer for low humidity. I'm just saying, in the homes that I've built, even in a low humid environment, because we're using the natural building materials and the way that we're decorating the home and not using synthetic type chemicals and all that kind of crap, like, I haven't had anybody, like, even with like dry mucous membranes or very sensitive to multiple chemical sensitivities or whatever, I've had people come through my homes and it hasn't been an issue.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah. All right, here's the last question. Could you expand on why mini splits are not great?
Yeah, it's really simple. Because a mini split is only climatizing the air. That's all it's doing. So it's just recirculating the air. And what happens, well, there's multiple things. One is if there's a condensation issue, you can get condensation in the unit, you can get microbial growth. That's one. The second is the filters. Doesn't have like a MERV rated filter, right? So it's just circulating that air. I'm not against mini splits, but if I was to use a mini split, I'm going to make sure that I use an independent energy recovery ventilator or some kind of a fresh air system that's plumbed in through like a HEPA filter. So at least I have fresh air coming in, and then I have that filter with a return and a supply that's constantly scrubbing that air. And then I'll use the mini split to climatize it. All it's doing is climatizing clean air, right? It's not trying to like recirculate crappy air, but then you have this issue of, if you're in a high humid environment, you could get a lot of condensation buildup. And that's kind of another, I haven't really, well, I have seen that actually in Florida. I'm not against mini splits. If I do use them, it's going to be very strategic because I have fresh air makeup, I have fresh air coming in, ventilation, and I'm filtering that air independently on its own. And the mini split, all it's doing is climatizing. That's it.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
You can find them at Synergy 360, healthybuildingalliance.org. And all of his information is linked in the article. And I'll add the Healthy Building Alliance to your bio in the article so that that's there kind of forever as well.
Catherine,
thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. This was a lot of fun. I love the questions. I love everything that you brought up, and I'm super happy to be part of, Microbalance and what you guys are doing, and all of the different products that you bring in, because it's an essential piece to the puzzle of everything. So thank you for having me. Glad to share.
Well, thanks. And hopefully maybe we can have you back and talk about EMFs because that's a live unto itself. So
yes, it is. Yeah, we can talk. Right. We can have a whole discussion on lighting too.
Yeah. So. Well, I watched something you did on Instagram about lighting the other day, and I find that fascinating and very, very helpful. Okay.
Water, lighting, EMFs, everything.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.